Hello there, it is Dr. Shana and welcome to 69 Love. The first thing I would like to do once again is thank you all so very much for subscribing and sharing and liking and watching our videos, making comments, asking questions. It's outstanding. And please continue to also visit 69love.com and consider joining that and letting some of my tips help reconnect you to your partner even more deeply. Today we are coming to you with another question. I had someone reach out and ask how to heal from an affair. Unfortunately, this is a question that is common in therapy, especially couples therapy. Unfortunately, a lot of relationships struggle to a degree that maybe is unidentifiable and can often lead to some sort of betrayal. And there are 3 steps. There are 3 very specific steps that Gottman has identified to help work through that kind of breach of trust. The first thing couples need to do is kind of determine what an affair actually looks like. Sometimes it is physical and sexual. Sometimes it can be an emotional attachment that maybe develops between 2 people that kind of crosses the line between what is private and part of my relationship and what should maybe be shared with someone else. I've had couples come in with internet affairs and text message affairs and video affairs. So ultimately, couples need to decide for them what is kind of that line that this would make me uncomfortable if it were crossed, and it would lead me to struggle with maybe regaining some trust. So in the end, we'll use the word affair, but please keep in mind that this can be applied to all of those other forms of betrayal as well. And we're going to go through those 3 phases. The first phase of working through an affair is called atonement. And atonement is when we get some answers to the questions that we have, and it leads to a really heartfelt apology, and we can maybe close the door on that part. What sometimes happens, in my experience, what can be frustrating for both parties is when these same questions just keep coming up and coming up and coming up, and they're kind of spattered throughout the weeks and the days, and it feels like we're being pummeled with these questions. The person who did the cheating is sometimes unsure if they'll ever be able to give answers that are satisfactory. The person that did the cheating is also wondering, like, how long will this actually go on? And I imagine that that can be very frustrating for that person. However, on the other side, Gottman describes and compares the way that the person that was cheated on and their experiences, the way that they feel, is very similar to symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. That person that was cheated on can't sometimes control their hypervigilance or their fear that there's going to be another text message or another phone call or another hotel room, and they pour over the messages that they already are aware about, and they have these visions of seeing their person with another person doing those things that they thought they only shared with them, and they have nightmares and they have insomnia, and that is very common and very similar to the way that a soldier may feel after coming back to war. Now, I'm not saying that it's the same, because that is an incredibly intense situation, but some of these symptoms are very similar. So that person that was cheated on does not know how to manage that. So when they have a thought, they might ask a question, then they have another thought 20 minutes later and they ask another question. So Gottman's idea behind this whole atonement phase is that the person that was cheated on is going to get one last opportunity to ask questions, and the person that did the cheating is going to commit completely to being honest. The only questions that are off the table are questions about the actual intimate acts of sex, if that happened, because ultimately those answers are not necessarily helpful, nor do we really want that information, even if it seems as if we might. The other rule is that the person that did the betraying cannot get defensive. They have to understand that this is a very difficult situation and that there is a commitment on both sides to this being the last time these questions are answered. We're going to put this to bed and we're going to really move on. If you out there Google some examples of those questions from Gottman's point of view, it could be very, very, very helpful and kind of guide you a little bit into some questions you may not be thinking about, and the answers might actually be very helpful. And I'll remind you again, like, these 3 phases are not Shana's good ideas as to what we should do to heal from an affair. Everything we talk about in these videos is very research-based and very Gottman method-driven. The second phase of healing from this affair is called attunement, and that is basically rebuilding. That is when a couple needs to reflect back and actually identify places where maybe needs weren't met, where maybe there was a disconnect in communication or showing love. Maybe we revisit the love maps and we look at what it's like to have interesting, connecting conversations with one another. Maybe we look at the 4 Horsemen video and recognize that during conflict, we were using some of those horsemen and actually creating a divide between the 2 of us. And if we can learn some of that information and reflect and say, hey, I can see that I didn't do a very good job. This is what I would like it to look like. We can rebuild some of those very intricate parts of the relationship. Phase 3 is attachment. This is when a lot of couples are going to start considering what it might look like to rebuild that intimate, physical part of the relationship. So first, we're going to be honest about what happened, and we are going to give the most heartfelt apology that we possibly can. Not just an I'm sorry, but I recognize that what I did put you in a whirlwind of crazy emotions that you never would have imagined, and maybe even is leading you to act in a way that feels incredibly uncomfortable, to double check everything and second guess things, and that is not a comfortable state to be in. Second phase is reflecting and looking back at maybe where we didn't do a great job, and then we consider that physical attachment, where maybe there's some romance, maybe there is some gentle lower level physical touch, and maybe we reconsider what it might look like to actually have physical intimacy and share sex with one another again. So very specifically, these are the 3 phases. I hope that this information is helpful. It is difficult to rebuild and reconnect after an affair or some kind of cheating, but I guarantee, based on what I have seen in this office, that sometimes we can have the most beautiful love after we learn and really focus on what it looks like to have the healthiest kind of relationship that we can after all. So once again, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing and sharing and liking. Check out 69 Love and see if that can be helpful. And just remember every day that it might look really cool if we just decided to share a little bit more love with one another.